Bermuda, b(r‌mjuːdə, also referred to in legal documents as fully the Bermudas or Somers Isles, is a British overseas territory in the North Atlantic Ocean, located off the east coast of North America. Its nearest landmass is Cape Hatteras, United States, about 1,030 kilometers to the west-northwest. It is about 1,239 kilometers south of Cape Sable Island, Canada, and 1,538 kilometers north of Puerto Rico. Its capital city is Hamilton. The first known European explorer to reach Bermuda was Spanish sea captain Juan de Bermudez in 1503, after whom the islands are named. He claimed the apparently uninhabited islands for the Spanish Empire. Paying 2 visits to the archipelago, Bermudez never landed on the islands, but did create a recognizable map of the archipelago. Shipwrecked Portuguese mariners are now thought to have been responsible for the 1543 inscription in Portuguese rock. Subsequent Spanish or other European parties are believed to have released pigs there, which had become feral and abundant on the island by the time European settlement began. In 1609, the English Virginia Company, which had established Jamestown in Virginia 2 years earlier, permanently settled Bermuda in the aftermath of a hurricane. When the crew and passengers of the Sea Venture steered the ship onto the surrounding reef to prevent its sinking, then landed ashore. The island was administered as an extension of Virginia by the company until 1614. Its spin-off, the Somers Isles Company, took over in 1615 and managed the colony until 1684. At that time, the company's charter was revoked, and the English Crown took over administration. The islands became a British colony following the 1707 unification of the Parliaments of Scotland and England, which created the Kingdom of Great Britain. After 1949, when Newfoundland became part of Canada, Bermuda was automatically ranked as the oldest remaining British overseas territory. Since the return of Hong Kong to China in 1997, it is the most populous territory. Its first capital, St. George's, was established in 1612 and is the oldest continuously inhabited English town in the New World. Bermuda's economy is based on offshore insurance and reinsurance, and tourism, the 2 largest economic sectors. Bermuda had one of the world's highest GDP per capita for most of the 20th century and several years beyond. Recently, its economic status has been affected by the global recession. It has a subtropical climate. Bermuda is the northernmost point of the Bermuda Triangle, a region of sea in which, according to legend, a number of aircraft and surface vessels have disappeared under supposedly unexplained or mysterious circumstances. The island is in the hurricane belt and prone to severe weather. However, it is somewhat protected from the full force of the hurricane by the coral reef that surrounds the island. Geography. Bermuda is a group of low-forming volcanoes located in the Atlantic Ocean, near the western edge of the Sargasso Sea, roughly 650 nautical miles east-southeast of Cape Hatteras on the outer banks of North Carolina, and about 590 nautical miles southeast of Martha's Vineyard of Massachusetts. It is 898.2 nautical miles northeast of Miami, Florida, and 667.374 nautical miles from Cape Sable Island, in Nova Scotia, Canada. The islands lie due east of Fripp Island, South Carolina, west of Spain and north of Puerto Rico. The archipelago is formed by high points on the rim of the caldera of a submarine volcano that forms a seamount. The volcano is one part of a range that was formed as part of the same process that formed the floor of the Atlantic, and the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. The top of the seamount has gone through periods of complete submergence, during which its limestone cap was formed by marine organisms. And during the Ice Ages the entire caldera was above sea level, forming an island of approximately 200 square miles. It has 103 kilometers of coastline. The The two incorporated municipalities in Bermuda are the city of Hamilton and the town of St. George. Bermuda is divided into 9 parishes, which have some localities called villages, such as Flats Village and Somerset Village. Although usually referred to in the singular, the territory consists of 181 islands, with a total area of 53.3 square kilometers. The largest island is Main Island, sometimes called Bermuda. Compiling a list of the islands is often complicated, as many have more than one name. Despite the small land mass, place names are repeated. There are, for example, 2 islands named Long Island, 3 bays named Long Bay, 2 horseshoe hoedown bays. There are 2 roads through cuttings called Khyber Pass, and St. George's Town is located on St. George's Island within St. George's Parish. There is a Hamilton Parish in addition to the city of Hamilton. Parishes and municipalities. Bermuda is divided into 9 parishes and 2 incorporated municipalities. Bermuda's 9 parishes are Devonshire, Hamilton, Paget, Pembroke, Sandys, Smiths, Southampton, St. George's, Warwick. Bermuda's 2 incorporated municipalities are Hamilton, St. George's. Bermuda's 2 informal villages are Flats Village, Somerset Village, Jones Village, Cashew City, Claytown, Middletown, and Tucker's Town are neighborhoods. Dandy Town and North Village are sports clubs, and Harbour View Village is a small public housing development. Demographics. Bermuda's 2010 census put Bermuda's population at 64,237 and, with an area of 53.2 square kilometers, it has a calculated population density of 1,207 per square kilometers. To get this in a wider context, an average population density of 53 per square kilometers was found for the world as of July 5, 2014. The racial makeup of Bermuda as recorded by the 2010 census was 54% black, 31% white, 8% multiracial, 4% Asian, and 4% other races. Although these numbers are based on self-identification, and the majority of those who aren't SAD black have any mixture of black, white and indigenous American ancestry. Native-born Bermudians made up 67% of the population, compared to 29% non-natives. The island experienced large-scale immigration over the 20th century, especially after the Second World War. Bermuda has a diverse population including both those with relatively deep roots in Bermuda extending back for centuries, and newer communities whose ancestry results from recent immigration, especially from Britain, North America, the West Indies, and the Portuguese Atlantic Islands, although these groups are steadily merging. About 46% of the population identified themselves with Bermudian ancestry in 2010, which was a decrease from the 51% who did so in the 2000 census. Those identifying with British ancestry dropped by 1% to 11%. The number of people born in Canada declined by 13%. Those who reported West Indian ancestry were 13%. The number of people born in the West Indies actually increased by 538. A significant segment of the population is of Portuguese ancestry, the result of immigration over the past 160 years, of whom 79% have residency status. The deeper ancestral demography of Bermuda's population has been obscured by the ethnic homogenization of the last 4 centuries. There is effectively no ethnic distinction between black and white Bermudians, other than those characterizing recent immigrant communities. In the 17th century, this was not so. For the first 100 years of settlement, white Protestants of English heritage were the distinct majority, with white minorities of Irish and Scots sent to Bermuda after the English invasions of their homelands that followed the English Civil War. Non-white minorities included Spanish-speaking, free blacks from the West Indies, black chattel slaves primarily captured from Spanish and Portuguese ships by Bermudian privateers, and Native Americans. primarily from the Algonquin and other tribes of the Atlantic seaboard, but possibly from as far away as Mexico. By the 19th century, the white ethnically English Bermudians had lost their numerical advantage, despite the banning of the importation of Irish, and the repeated attempts to force free blacks to emigrate and the owners of black slaves to export them. The merging of the various minority groups, along with some of the white English, had resulted in a new demographic group, colored Bermudians, gaining a slight majority. Any child born before or since then to one colored and one white parent has been added to the colored statistic. Most of those historically described as colored are today described as black or of African heritage, which obscures their non-African heritage. Blacks have remained in the majority, with new white immigration from Portugal, Britain and elsewhere countered by black immigration from the West Indies. Bermuda's modern black population contains more than one demographic group. Although the number of residents born in Africa is very small, it has tripled between 2000 and 2010. The majority of blacks in Bermuda can be termed Bermudian blacks, whose ancestry dates back centuries between the 17th century and the end of slavery in 1834. Bermuda's black population was self-sustaining, with its growth resulting largely from natural expansion. This contrasts to the enslaved blacks of the plantation colonies, who were subjected to conditions so harsh as to drop their birth rate below the death rate, and slaveholders in the United States and the West Indies found it necessary to continue importing more enslaved blacks from Africa until the end of slavery. The ancestry of Bermuda's black population is distinguished from that of the British West Indian black population in two ways. Firstly, the higher degree of European and Native American admixture. Secondly, the source of the African ancestry. In the British West Indian Islands, the majority of enslaved blacks brought across the Atlantic came from West Africa. Very little of Bermuda's original black emigration came from this area. The first blacks to arrive in Bermuda in any numbers were free blacks from Spanish-speaking areas of the West Indies, and most of the remainder were recently enslaved Africans captured from the Spanish and Portuguese, as Spain and Portugal sourced most of their slaves from southwest Africa. Genetic studies have consequently shown that the African ancestry of black Bermudians is largely from the Aband across southern Africa, from Angola to Mozambique, which is similar to what is revealed in Latin America, but distinctly different from the blacks of the West Indies and the United States. Most of Bermuda's black population trace some of their ancestry to Native Americans, although awareness of this is largely limited to St. David's Islanders, and most who have such ancestry are unaware of it. During the colonial period, hundreds of Native Americans worshipped to Bermuda. The best-known examples were the Algonquin peoples, who were exiled from the southern New England colonies and sold into slavery in the 17th century, notably in the aftermaths of the Pequot and King Philip's Wars. Today, several thousand expatriate workers, principally from Britain, Canada, the West Indies, South Africa and the U.S., reside in Bermuda. They are primarily engaged in specialized professions such as accounting, finance, and insurance. Others are employed in various trades, such as hotels, restaurants, construction, and landscaping services. Of the total workforce of 38,947 persons in 2005, government employment figures stated that 11,223 were non-Bermudians. Languages: the predominant language on Bermuda is Bermudian English, one of the most severely under-researched varieties of English. It exhibits characteristics of British, West Indian, and American English. Perhaps most interesting is its closeness to acrolectal English compared to other varieties in the West Indies. British English speakings and conventions are used in print media and formal written communications. Culture: Bermuda's culture is a mixture of the various sources of its population. Native American, Spanish Caribbean, English, Irish, and Scots cultures were evident in the 17th century. and became part of the dominant British culture. English is the primary and official language. Due to 160 years of immigration from Portuguese Atlantic islands, a portion of the population also speaks Portuguese. There are strong British influences, together with Afro-Caribbean ones. A second wave of immigration from the West Indies was sustained throughout the 20th century. The more recent arrivals have primarily come from English-speaking countries, also bringing aspects of their cultures. This new infusion of West Indians has both accelerated social and political change, and diversified Bermuda's culture. The first notable, and historically important, book credited to a Bermudian was The History of Mary Prince, a slave narrative by Mary Prince. It is thought to have contributed to the abolition of slavery in the British Empire. Ernest Graham Ingham, an expatriate author, published his books at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries. In the 20th century, numerous books were written and published locally, though few were directed at a wider market than Bermuda. The novelist Brian Burland achieved a degree of success and acclaim internationally. More recently, Angela Barry has won critical recognition for her published fiction. Bermuda's proximity to the United States, as well as its origin as part of Virginia, means that many aspects of U.S. culture are reflected in, or incorporated into, Bermudian culture. Many non-Bermudian writers have also made Bermuda their home, or have had homes here, including A. J. Cronin and F. Van Wyck Mason, who wrote on Bermudian subjects. Actors such as Ernest Trimmingham, Una O'Neill, Earl Cameron, Diana Dill, Lena Headey, Bull Kemp, and most famously, Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones, grew up here or have lived here as adults. Other native or resident film and television figures in Bermuda include producer Arthur Rankin, Jr., and cartoonist and Muppet Man, Michael Frith. Arts West Indian musicians introduced calypso music when Bermuda's tourist industry was expanded with the increase of visitors brought by post-Second World War aviation. While calypso appealed more to the visitors than to the locals, reggae has been embraced by many Bermudians since the 1970s with the influx of Jamaican immigrants. Bermuda's early literature consisted of non-Bermudian writers commenting on the island. These included John Smith's The General History of Virginia, New England, and the Summer Isles, and Edmund Waller's poem, Battle of the Summer Islands. Music and dance are important in Bermuda. Noted musicians have included local icons the Talbot Brothers, who performed for many decades both in Bermuda and the United States, and appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show. Jazz pianist Lance Hayward, singer-songwriter Heather Nova and her brother Mishka, tenor Gary Burgess, classical musician and conductor Kenneth Amerson, more recently, dancehall artist Collie Buddz. Bermuda is the only place name in the New World specifically mentioned in the works of Shakespeare, in The Tempest in Act 1, Scene 2, line 230. The still vexed Bermudes. The dances of the colorful Gombe dances, seen at many events, are strongly influenced by African, Caribbean, Native American and British cultural traditions. In summer 2001 they performed in Washington, D.C. at the Smithsonian Folklife Festival on the Mall. Bermudian Gina Swainson was crowned Miss World in 1979. Bermuda hosts an annual international film festival which shows many independent films. One of the founders is film producer and director Arthur Rankin, Jr., co-founder of the Rankin-based production company. Bermuda watercolors painted by local artists are sold at various galleries. Hand-carved cedar sculptures are another speciality. One such 7-feet sculpture, created by Bermudian sculptor Chesley Trott, is installed at the airport's baggage claim area. In 2010, his sculpture The Arrival was unveiled near the bay to commemorate the freeing of slaves from the American brig Enterprise in 1835. Local artwork may also be viewed at several galleries around the island. Alfred Birdsey was one of the more famous and talented watercolorists. His impressionistic landscapes of Hamilton, St. George's and the surrounding sailboats, homes, and bays of Bermuda are world-renowned. Local resident Tom Butterfield founded the Masterworks Museum of Bermuda Art in 1986, initially featuring works about Bermuda by artists from other countries. He began with pieces by American artists, such as Winslow Homer, Charles Demuth, and Georgia O'Keeffe, who had lived and worked here. He has increasingly supported the development of local artists, arts education, and the arts scene. In 2008, the museum opened its new building, constructed within the Botanic Gardens.